One of the latest surveys is really showing us how much the Russian population is very divided toward the war. The survey was done in the first days of the war, so like really first days of March. And it was telling us like about 60% of the Russian population is supporting the war. But of course, they are supporting what they are told is the war. And on the Russian state media, you cannot say it's a war. It's looked like what is called a special operation. So people said yes, that they are supporting that war, but they of course don't see the whole spectrum of the war as we know it's happening. They don't know it's so violence against civilians. They think it's only on the Donbass. They don't realize it's happening all over Ukraine. So they said yes to something that is not the reality. But if people knew really about the violence, about the attacks against civilians, I think they will be probably largely less supportive. I think he was given really a very kind of bad information. And I think that's a very typical feature, of an old, aging, authoritarian leader living in a more and more isolated way. And we know that he is still very afraid of COVID. So he has spent the last 2 years really in deep isolation, both physically, but also probably politically. And so he was probably told that, the Ukrainian state will collapse very rapidly. The Ukrainian army will not fight. Ukrainian citizens will be receiving Russian soldiers with flour. And so he probably thought it would be an easy sell. And what we don't really know is the level of discontent among the Russian political elites. We know that the majority of them were not in favor of the war. We know that they all got taken by surprise with the war. So the decision for the war was probably taken by Putin himself and like 2, 3, 4 people, a very, very small group of people. The legitimacy of the regime will be more and more diminished, and therefore the repressive tools will be more and more activated against the population, especially if the sanctions continue, and they will continue to hurt the population. Then the discontent will be becoming really, really high. And I think that's one of the big kind of headache of the Russian government now, is that what to do to try to limit the impact of sanction on the population. But as we know, the sanctions are also hurting the Russian budget at large. And so they probably have money to run for a few weeks, a few months, but not for a very, very long time. So at the everyday level, so far, the sanctions are impacting the capacity of Russian citizens to withdraw money. Some products are already missing. Medication is already missing, diapers, baby formula, a lot of things that are necessary for everyday life. Even in big cities like Moscow, China could play a lot in trying to mitigate the sanctions for Russia, but we also see that the Chinese government is very careful on the way it is managing that. So several countries from the Middle East, potentially India. So Russia will really have to pivot toward Middle East and Asia to try to fill the gap, and still it will not be able to fill it. It can just try to mitigate. We know that tens of thousands of people have been fleeing Russia these last 2 weeks while there was still some planes going on. So you now have a huge Russian kind of minority in exile in Armenia, in Georgia, in the Baltic states. So all these Russian liberals, or those who were against the war, are trying to flee. So the country is also losing its human capital very fast. Everything that was happening during perestroika and at the collapse of the Soviet Union 30 years ago, this parenthesis is closed. And now we are no more in a kind of post-Soviet world. We will be in a post-Soviet situation.